Okay, ladies and gents, here we are on health psychology, which, from a certain perspective, is one of the primary reasons that you probably took this class. Not that we're not all interested in how other people can improve and be well, but at the core, we would really like ourselves to be well and be happy. And so that's a lot of what we're going to talk about. And it seems like an appropriate place to end our semester together is how can we uh, create positive change in our own lives and make ourselves more the people that we want to be. And really, health psychology incorporates and encapsulates a whole lot of that topic because it really is. Health psychology is an outgrowth of what was previously called positive psychology, in which sometime right around the 40s or 50s, a bunch of psychologists said, you know, we spend all of our time focused on mental health disorders and on things that go wrong with people. And that may be coloring how we view humans as a whole. Why don't we instead focus on the people who are doing really well and study them and try to see what characteristics they have so that we can take that to other people who are struggling? And it's just sort of flipping the coin to its other side to say, well, let's look at positive functioning and try and focus on that and study that rather than studying our problems. So within health psychology, you've got, well, not necessarily within the realm of health psychology, but within our chapter, as we talk about health psychology, here's the different things that we're going to be focused on. And we won't get to all of these today. We'll leave half of this for next time. But today we'll talk about the difference between health psychology and behavioral medicine, uh, some of the theories for making positive change in your life, and we'll begin on some of the resources that we can uh, implement or focus on to create positive change, and then we'll leave the rest of it for next time. Okay, so we've got several different interrelated fields here that are all focused on helping people be well, be happy, be healthy. We focus most, given that this is a psychology class and I am a psychologist, we're going to focus most on health psychology, which, as you can see there, tends to focus most on what's going on in your head in order to create positive change for people's. And there are a variety of different factors if we're just talking about what's going on in your head, right? There is your social interactions and who are you talking to, who are you dealing with, how are they affecting you, how are your responses to the people around you affecting you. There are behavioral aspects as well. How are the behaviors that I'm actually engaging in either helping me or harming me? And then, of course, the cognitive factors. How am I thinking about these things? All of this together, when focused on that sort of positive end, can help us create more positive change for ourselves. Behavioral medicine does a whole lot of the same thing, except that it tends to be a little bit more focused on the biological aspects and medical interventions that can help. This is frequently necessary, and there is a whole lot of back and forth or interdisciplinary work that happens between health psychology and behavioral medicine because they are focused on a lot of the same outcomes. It's just one is focused a little bit more on the mental aspects of health and others more on the biomedical aspects of health. Now, you also get a bunch of folks who are not necessarily doing the research themselves, but are working with the folks who are doing the research to publicize the research, to say, hey, we've figured out that doing this one thing will help you feel better. This one weird trick, doctors hate this guy. No, that's not what I'm talking about. But the idea that new ideas, good ideas, need to be publicized and advertised in our society in order to let people know that it's something that they need to take advantage of and be thinking about, is necessary, or else no change actually happens, right? The folks who are likely to be most in need of the positive changes that this kind of research can bring in their lives are likely to be the people least focused on finding it themselves. So there are folks involved in health promotion, and then related to that, folks who are interested in using this research to help guide public policy so that we are using the best information possible to help create our laws and our rules in our schools and things like that, so that people are using the best information possible to uh, move their lives forward in a positive direction, right? Now, as we talked about, I believe in the both the treatment and the disorders chapters, we're really focused on a melding of different models here, right? We don't want to just focus on one particular psychological perspective, or just the biological perspective, or any one, you know, theoretical backing. We want them all to come together into a melting pot where we can take the best ideas from all of them and maximize our chances of finding the factors that are really going to make the difference for people. And this is what we call the biopsychosocial model, where we are trying to integrate not just physical changes from the biological model, and not just social changes from that perspective, not just psychological changes from, say, the cognitive perspective or the humanist perspective or whatever, but bringing those all together. Now, the thing that we have to recognize, and the reason why we want to bring all of these perspectives together, is that the body and the mind have a reciprocal relationship with each other, where each one affects the other. Now, it seems quite obvious that the functioning of our mind is going to impact the functioning of our body, because that's how we think about things and how we feel about things, and that's going to let us know how we want to be behaving, right? That's pretty obvious. But it goes the other direction as well, right? Think about how much more poorly you do on a test if you walk into that test feeling sick, or after you've had a fight with your boyfriend or your girlfriend. There is an impact that goes in the other direction as well, right? The functioning of your body and its physical state of stress and well-being is going to impact the functioning of your mind as well. And so that back and forth relationship is something that we've got to keep in mind if we really want to create more positive functioning for ourselves. And that's really what we're trying to focus on here, right? Now, let's talk about a few of the theories that are underlying and underpinning some of these models for change, because that's really what we want to do, right? We want to change the behavior that isn't working well for us and switch it out for behavior that does work well for us. Some of this terminology is going to stray into sort of an addiction model type of phraseology, but I want to recognize from the outset that it's much broader than that. We're not just talking about people trying to stop smoking or stop taking drugs, but really we're talking about any behavior that isn't working well for us, that is either causing us problems with the people around us or is making us unhealthy or unhappy. We want to switch those out for others that are going to work better for us. And while those may not be addictive behaviors, there is a lot of shared reasoning and thinking that helps inform a lot of why we stick with behaviors that aren't good for us, right? It has to be because we're getting something out of it, or we're used to it, and so it makes it difficult for us to change the way that we approach these things, right? Okay, so let's look at these two theories. There's the theory of reasoned action, which says that in order to introduce any sort of change into your life, you first have to have some specific intentions about that behavior. You have to want to change that behavior, and you have to have thought clearly about it. I don't like that I am surrounded by Taco Bell wrappers and feel awful and am going to have to visit the toilet 5 times today, right? So that is a very specific. Getting a little close to home there. Getting very specific about that behavior and what my intent is. I would like to change it, right? I have to have positive feelings about the new behavior, right? If I'm going to switch out my Taco Bell for, say, kale and quinoa, I'm going to have a really rough time. I don't like either of those foods. I don't have positive feelings about them. And as a result, I am unlikely to switch up that behavior. I have to switch it up for things that I feel positive about, right? Sweet potatoes. I can get behind sweet potatoes. Sweet, sweet. Let's do some of those. Um, Now, and then you also have to have a perception that the people around you are on your team, are supportive of whatever positive change you are trying to make. If you want to be eating, more healthily, but everybody else in your family is really not interested in that, you're going to find a hard time sticking with any new behavioral change if you're spending a lot of time with your family, because they're not gonna support you on, or maybe they won't. It depends on the individuals, right? But there are plenty of folks out there who don't want you to change just because they don't want to change themselves, and so that makes it a little bit more difficult. The theory of planned behavior incorporates all of those three things that we just talked about, so it's sort of an add-on to the theory of reasoned action. Theory of planned behavior says that you also, in addition to these other three things, have to have some perception of control over your outcome, right? Now, in the example that I gave, I want to stop eating Taco Bell and eat more healthily. I am likely to have a pretty high level of control. Now, there may be questions of willpower, and I'm driving past, and suddenly I find myself turning into the drive-through, or whatever the case may be. But, and those do factor into this idea of perceptions of control. How much control do I have over myself? However, you are unlikely to wake up in the middle of the night, having driven to Taco Bell, ordered, come home, eaten it all, in your sleep, right? So I do have at least some level of control over the outcomes. And so if I am willing to exert myself and exert some of my willpower, at least according to this theory, I ought to have a decent level of success so long as I've got all four of these things, right? I want to change. I have a positive feeling about the new things that I'm trying to implement. People are supporting me, and I can control my behavior. And I feel that I can control my behavior. Okay. I sort of cut off the top of that title, didn't I? How do individuals make healthy lifestyle changes? This is another theory that talks about how we change, right? So looking not just at what do we have to have in order to be able to make those changes, but what are the stages that we go through as we seek to make those changes. The first stage is pre-contemplation, where you are not ready to deal with it yet. You are not thinking about it. It's not on your radar. You don't feel bad about it. This is me coming home from spending $15 at Taco Bell, feeling fat and sassy and just fine, right? I am not ready to deal with this problem. Next step is contemplation, where I go, ooh, I don't feel good. I'm gaining a lot of weight. Ugh. I always feel terrible after I come home from eating out. Maybe I should do something about this. This is not the way I want to be, right? Then you move on to the preparation and determination stage, where you start to explore your options and make plans. All right, I don't like how I'm feeling. What can I do about it? What are my options? Well, I could go on a diet. There's this kind of diet I could go on, or I could hire a nutritionist, or I could start a gym program, or any combination of the above. What's going to work best for me? What am I willing to do? What do I feel best about? What excites me? That's the stage of preparation. Fourth stage is action/willpower. This is when you actually implement the change. Okay, I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to the gym. I'm actually making myself a meal plan for this next week. And Taco Bell is not on it. And I'm going to do this. I feel good about this. Let's go, right? And then Once you have started to make that change, you move into the maintenance phase, which is necessary for long-term success. Now, this is, it may be most effective to think of this set of steps as being at least partially cyclical, right? So if I get to the maintenance phase and I can't keep up whatever it is that I have implemented for myself, it's really easy to move into what they call relapse, where you go back to the negative habit that you had before and abandon your plans. However, any healthy model for change needs to include the possibility of relapse. Just because you have gone back to a well-worn and long-term behavior doesn't mean that you are necessarily defeated or done changing. It's hard to change behavior, and so it's likely that you're going to fall back into your old ways at least sometimes. So when that happens, proper maintenance means you take stock of what isn't working and adapt your plan to confront any shortcomings that it had. I didn't realize that I am used to stopping at Taco Bell on my way home from work. And I drive right past it and I sort of don't even think about it, and it's a really strong pull. Maybe I need to take a different way home, right? Um, that would be a change to the plan that could then help me get back into that action willpower phase and then back into maintenance quickly, so that I am keeping my changes over the long term. And a lot of the research, when it talks about long term, it's talking about maintaining a change for 6 months. Once you've done it for 6 months, you're likely to not have to spend a whole lot of effort to maintain the new positive behavior. All right, now those are some of our theories about how we make the changes. Let's talk about what we have to have internally in order to make those changes, because it's all well and good to have a plan and to have these sets of steps that you can move through, but you got to want to do it, right? We've got to talk about motivation. We talked about motivation pretty extensively in a previous chapter, but let's just revisit it for a second. Self-determination theory talks a lot about the difference between intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Now, a lot of the research suggests that intrinsic motivation works best for long-term change. However, most of us start out with at least partially extrinsic motivation. You go to the doctor, here I am, 41 years old, you go to the doctor and they're like, hey, hypertension, buddy, obesity, you got to make some changes, or you're gonna have a heart attack here in just a few years. This is a problem. And you go, oh crap, this is a problem. I hadn't really thought about that or dealt with that. Okay, I'll do it. And I know I'm going back to my doctor here in a few weeks for a checkup, and so I better do something about it, right? But then as you start to develop those changes in behavior, you start to internalize some of the motivation as you start to gain the benefits from the positive change, right? That's the idea, is that any positive change is its own reward to at least a certain degree, where you really appreciate not feeling quite so sluggish, not having to stop at the end of the driveway to catch your breath when you go out to get the mail, things like that. And eventually you move more towards an intrinsic motivation, where you want to maintain these changes for your own benefit because you care about them, not because somebody else is forcing you to do them. There is also the question of implementation intentions, right? You can make all of the plans in the world, but unless you actually really intend to make those changes, you actually have the determination and the motivation to say, I'm going to put this into action, and I really care about this, and I would like to make this change, then you're unlikely to actually make those changes. So this ideally comes as part of the contemplation stage that we talked about before, right? Where you're thinking about it, you're like, this is a problem. I would like to change this. I feel that this is bad for me and I would like to change, right? That's where hopefully you get the motivation for that implementation intention. Okay. All right, I think I'm actually going to stop us there. We're about halfway through our slides here. Next time we will talk about some of the external resources of sort of outside ourself and our personality that can be used to um, help us increase our likelihood of making positive change and sticking with it. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you soon.